Hey there, and welcome to the first devlog of Astro Seeker. Right off the bat, a disclaimer: I'm not a professional game developer, nor am I good at coding. As a matter of fact, I've never made games more complicated than Battleship. With that in mind, I want to say that this passion project of mine can be overly ambitious. A few years ago, I found myself unable to play anything on the game market, apart from just maybe a few titles which I'm heavily influenced by. None of the existing games seem to combine all my favorite mechanics, so the decision has been made to build a game of my own. As you can probably tell by the title, I'm gonna be making this thing with JavaScript. And yeah, it's the stuff you make websites with. I know, it's silly, right? Well, hear me out. I just happen to know some JavaScript. I've made some websites with HTML, CSS, and all that stuff. While it might not be the best tool for the job, I feel confident that it might be just enough for what Astro Seeker is aiming at here. Now, I've looked into game engines like Unity and Unreal, and they're all great, but to be honest with you, I'm just too lazy to learn them from scratch. Plus, they seem to be a little bit too bloated with unnecessary complexity. I want to start with only some basic frameworks to get the app up and running. There are game engines and libraries for JavaScript as well, like Phaser, but they just seem to be like a bunch of functions, which they are, and I feel like I can write functions myself. I don't know much about game development, but it seems logical that there should be a solid plan of what the game should be as a result, and there is no such plan in place. There's no grand vision, only some vague ideas about the gameplay and the style I want. As for the style, I'm a big fan of sci-fi spaceship controls design. I love interacting with the game like I'm a pilot in the cockpit. There should be lights, buttons, indicators, confusing abbreviations, and all that nonsense. Have you seen Iron Lung? It shows a great example of how you can deliver a sense of controlling a vehicle. Also, look at some retro space simulators. They give a perfect sense of what Astro Seeker will try to mimic. There was this another game, Objects in Space, that looked very promising, and I would have loved it, but as far as I know, the development got abandoned. As far as the mechanics go, I know I want to have two things: loot it yourself for profit, and a terminal that you can use to interact with the game. Lethal Company has these concepts in place, and it's really a great game, but I want to see these mechanics in a game designed for single player. Astro Seeker will be a space sim with a ship that can be flown around. It will have a terminal to interact with and loot that you can collect and sell for profit. Other mechanics are still up for debate. For instance, I've been thinking if there should be an ability to code in game, just like Bitwarden or Greyhack, but this comes with two big drawbacks. I know it will be hard to make it right, to kind of implement this thing right, and it's that making a coding game cuts off a huge chunk of potential players. That's because coding appeals to only a small niche of geeks like myself. The other thing is a dynamic market that could make trading a lot more interesting. This too should be probably pretty hard to make, and I think that it can be done later after I've kind of have a playable version of the game up and running. In other words, the market's not something I want to start from. So where did I start from? There should be a working way of flying a spaceship. I started with making a radar that aims to assist the player with navigation. The ship has a velocity, which is basically its speed, and it's got an angle at which it flies. There's an engine on and an engine off button. It would allow control of the thrusting, and there's a turning left and right buttons that would change the angle of the flight. I've made a basic coordinate system that is used to map out objects. Here you can see the prototype of the radar, where I can control the movement of a white dot. The radar received an update of some green text indicators, just because the more indicators the better, okay? I quickly realized that the ship should actually be stationary and it's the objects around that should be moving. I wanted to throw in silly abbreviations as soon as possible, so I've added VOD, which is Vessel Origin Display, and RCD, which is a Radar Contact Display. The VOD is used to just simply turn off the dot that represents the ship. I don't know yet how that can be useful, but I'll think of something. The RCD controls do have a purpose. The radar can be scaled outward, and thus some small objects are barely visible. Turning up RCD can make these dots appear bigger. The engine now has VCAP, which is short for velocity cap. It's basically a limit set on the ship's speed, so the player won't be able to thrust into infinity and beyond. Later on, I want to make the engine upgradable, to increase the VCAP, allowing the player to travel to some of the more distant places in space. And the terminal is born. Upon making it, I wanted to make it usable. The input of the terminal has a history, just like on any other real terminal. 2 commands were added: help, which is a must for viewing available commands, and scan, which is going to be very important for getting information about objects in space. The scan sends the data received to a new module, Astro Tracker, that sits right on top of the radar. Some of the information that you see in it, of course, is the distance of the object from the ship, its unique identification name, and the security level, which is hidden for now from a simple scan. In order to view the security level, along with other information about the celestial body, you have to perform a deep scan. This is done by typing scan and specifying the name of the object you want to scan. The terminal outputs the results of the deep scan, and the Astro Tracker gets updated with the security level of the object scanned. Next, I've created an algorithm that will generate completely random ASCII characters that will represent the shapes of the objects in space upon deep scan. This was a very fun thing to do, and I think it works well. I've also added many different types of objects. Up next on the list are drones. The drones are going to be responsible for looting objects in space. In the beginning, you start out with just one drone. The idea is that they can be added and upgraded for efficiency. To get the drones to actually work, I've added loot to the game. For now, it's only a hairbrush. Drones can be deployed only when there is an object nearby by the spaceship, and if the drone is charged. When working, drones are constantly searching for items until they're called back or the battery runs out. They can be deployed by typing drone deploy and specifying the name of the drone. Same goes for returning the drone. By this time, I've gotten a lot of issues with circular dependencies that took a long time to fix, but somehow looks like they've gotten resolved for now. By the way, my code is probably terrible at every single step of the way, and I'm really surprised that anything works. It's just magic. I've added the cargo monitor, which can be used to display the looted items. With this module, it looked like the very basic skeleton of the game's UI was in place, so I decided to bring it to life a little bit with CSS. Bam! Now this is a little bit more pleasant to look at. There will probably be more modules in the ship's dashboard in the future, but for now, this is what I came up with. The cargo monitor seems like it's taking too much unnecessary space, so I'll think about what else can sit right beside it. Or if you have any suggestions, feel free to share your ideas in the comments. I'll be glad to read through them. What you've seen here is not a lot, but it took roughly 3 or 4 months to make on and off on my free time. I'm really excited to share this milestone of development with you, and hopefully this can inspire some of you, perhaps to make a game of your own. It's really delightful to see how things are working out so far, and I've got a lot of ideas for the future of Astro Seeker. If you want to follow my project, feel free to subscribe for more future videos. I hope you're having a good day. I'm surprised that you made it this far in the video. You have my respect, honestly. Take care, okay, and see you later.